Hi friends! In today's video I have 3 sweet and simple watercolor card ideas for Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day is right around the corner, so this is the perfect activity for painters at a variety of stages. There is something here for everyone, so grab your watercolors and let's get started. For this first tutorial we will be creating what I'm calling a heart garden. You will need watercolor paper or watercolor card paper, or like I'm using postcards. These are the 4x6 by Strathmore. And if you're using regular watercolor paper, I recommend painting it flat first, letting it dry, and then folding it. Or you can fold it first and then tape it to your work surface, whichever you prefer. For watercolor shades, pick any Valentine's colors you like. I'm picking pinks and purples, and you will also need a green color. For brushes, I recommend using a small round brush. I'm using my silver black velvet round. And lastly, you will need a heart-shaped cookie cutter. If you don't have one and you don't want to go buy one, you can create your own by cutting off a piece of either an empty paper towel roll or toilet paper roll and forming that into the shape of a heart. The first thing you're going to do is wet your paints and load your brush with any color you'd like. Then you're going to run your brush along the edge of your cookie cutter. You're going to stamp that cutter onto your paper, and then taking a clean brush, you're going to fill in the heart by running your brush along the edges of the paint and letting it bleed out into your heart. Make sure your brush is loaded with a good amount of water so that it really flows nicely. You can also dab in a little bit of color in any spot you want and then just repeat the process. Just slowly run your brush along the edge and let it fill in on its own. I'm then going to take my green shade and very lightly draw some stems. You can have them either go straight or you can make them a little wavy. I am then taking my brush at an angle and flatly laying it down near the stem to make pointed petals. Again, I'm going to draw up some fine lines and then stamp the leaves on. And I'm just going wherever I see fit. This is not perfect. You want the leaves and the grass to be irregular. I decided because my cutter was so thin around the edge that I was going to put the paint down first and then rub my color into it, and that seemed to work better. So if you don't have a cookie cutter that has a thicker edge, this might be a preferred method. I know I have a bigger one that's plastic and it's got like a thicker rim, and that would be fine to paint on. So again, just doing whatever is best for whatever materials you have. I'm going to add a stem to that one as well as some leaves. And I'm going to start overlapping my hearts a little bit because I want them to be layered. And I'm also very mindful to make sure that there are different levels of transparency. I don't want to drop in too much color and just make them all dark. I'm trying to keep that translucent watercolor effect. For this heart, I went a little bit warmer, and then the other one's a little bit cooler. I also accidentally dabbed a little bit of green in there that I didn't want, so I just took my paper towel and picked it up really quickly. Here I'm taking more of my green. I'm using Perelyne green for this because I wanted it to be a cool tone green. And making more leaves. For my pinks, I'm using Opera Rose. I'm using Imperial Purple right now. And I'm also using Quin Rose and I believe a little bit of Rose of Ultramarine. But again, use whatever paints and colors you have. That heart was a little sideways, so I'm just playing around with it, adding more leaves and stems. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're also welcome to go over the leaves like I just did. It's okay. You can just either paint around it or just paint right over it. And I'm just going to continue to fill in my heart garden with my colors and adding them at different heights as well to make it look irregular and organic. And I'm just looking for some negative space to add leaves in. This is for fun, this is for experimenting, and do whatever your heart feels, no pun intended. I'm just filling in the last few areas with some extra leaves and stems. And then I'm going to take a little bit of my pink and purple and splatter it around. I really like the look of that. This is totally optional. You don't have to do that. I'm just loading my brush up with a good amount of paint and tapping my brush to create the splatter. And then I'm going to let my card dry. And here is what the colors look like all dry. Absolutely adorable. I love this one. Okay, for the second tutorial, we are taking a flat brush and we are picking whichever color we want, and we are creating a stripe that goes all along the top edge. It's okay if it runs out of color or water. You can just start in the middle and keep going and smooth it out as you go. I'm using rows of ultramarine here. And then I'm going to take a different color. This one I believe is Quinacridone rose, and I'm going to run it along right underneath that first line. I am being intentional and letting them touch because I like that, but you don't have to do that. I'm then alternating to a different pink color. This one is Opera Rose. And I'm just gonna go ahead and smooth that out and even out that water and color. And just repeat the process until you've filled up the entire card. And we are just going to let those stripes dry. Now that the stripes are dry, we then get whatever paint we have, either metallic or white, or whatever markers, Sharpies, acrylic markers, Posca pens, whatever you have and whatever you feel like using. And we are going to take them and we are going to write a Valentine's quote on top of our stripes. So I'm writing Be Mine, but you can write, Happy Valentine's Day, I love you. I think maybe something from a conversation heart would be cute as well, one of the quotes on there. And I'm just lightly sketching it with a pencil to make sure I have space for the whole word and to make sure it's even. I'm then going to take my white paint. I'm using P.H. Martin's Bleedproof White, but you can use anything you want. Again, I tried to do it with metallic to start and it was not nearly as opaque as I thought it was going to be, and you couldn't really read the words, so I'm going over it with white. And then I'm going to add some gold detail afterward. If you are not comfortable or confident using a brush to write, I'm using a rather stiff synthetic brush for this. This is a Winsor Newton. I can't remember if it's from their Cotman line or if it's their professional line, but it's a stiffer brush, so I have more control with my lettering. But if you don't feel comfortable or confident doing that, feel free to use a pen or a Posca pen or a marker, whatever you want. Once that Bleedproof White was dry, I then went in with my gold Posca pen and I just started making little hearts all around. It's a cute little detail that's very reflective, which is fun. I then took that same pen and I'm just going around my letters so that they pop out with that metallic around them. Then just adding a few more heart details, and then we are done. Super simple, great for beginners or anyone, and it's a really cute Valentine's card idea. And for this last one, it requires a little bit more skill, but I think beginners and anyone can attempt to do this. It will require masking fluid You don't have to use a masking fluid, but I definitely recommend it. I'm going to start by just softly sketching a heart. And hearts are a little tricky for me. I think it's because they're symmetrical, so making them look exactly the same on either side can be a little difficult. If you have like a large cookie cutter or something that you want to use instead, you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm now taking my kneaded eraser and just lifting up some of that pencil color so that it doesn't stand out. I am now taking my masking fluid with a cheap craft brush because masking fluid can ruin brushes. Do not use masking fluid with a good quality brush or an expensive brush. Get those cheap packs from the dollar store and use those. And I am using the Pebeo liquid masking fluid. It's also called Frisket. I believe Winsor & Newton has one and they call it Frisket. I like the Pebeo one because it's blue and I can see when I'm painting exactly where it is, whereas some other ones are clear and it can be trickier. I'm then going to let that masking fluid dry. Once it's dry, I'm going to start by creating some roses, some tiny roses. I'm going to start by creating little C curves or crescent shapes that are kind of nested into each other. They're not perfect. You're going around the edges of each one and making them irregular. I even like to wiggle my brush a little bit to give them kind of more movement. Then you're going to clean off your brush and with just some water, not too much, you're going to fan out the color along the edges of those petals, because if you look at a rose, it's darker in the center and then the outside petals are a lot lighter. So we're trying to give that effect as we make these roses. You can even go in like I just did and just add a little dab of darker pink in the middle. I am now taking my brush, I am taking the very fine tip, making a little line, and then pressing my brush down and then lifting up to create a point. So unlike the heart garden, this rose-filled heart has leaves that I am pointing at the end. So instead of just laying it flat and lifting up, I'm laying it flat and I'm dragging it to a point. Now for this rose, we repeat the process, do those little crescent moon C curves that are kind of nestled into each other, and then clean your brush and get some water on there and fan out those leaves around the edges to make it bigger. I also recommend doing a variety of colors and transparencies just so it's more, aesthetically interesting. Again, I'm going in and making a tiny fine line, and then I'm pushing my brush down at an angle, and that one didn't get quite a good tip, so I just drew in a tip. These don't have to be perfect. I don't really like when all my leaves look exactly the same. You want some to be whiter, some to be skinnier. I am now taking a lighter color green that I'm mixing with some white, and I'm just creating like little half circles that aren't filled in to give it that look of filling in. Like if you've seen a bouquet that has those little sprays of filled in flowers, because I don't want it just to be roses everywhere because they're circular. There's going to be gaps, obviously. So I wanted to fill it in with some fluff. And the nice thing about the masking fluid is you can be a lot more free with your painting, with painting the flowers and the leaves, because you're not feeling like you have to confine in that heart, because the masking fluid is preventing the paint from getting where you don't want it to go. Just adding a few more little rosettes. And then I'm going in with a darker shade of green and just adding a little bit of detail to those leaves. See how I'm just paint right over that masking fluid and it repels it. And one last rose, adding a little bit more depth to those leaves and filling in with some of those sprays. And now we're just going to let that dry. Once it is dry, you can take any eraser. This one is specific for masking fluid, and you're just going to start peeling it up very gently because some papers can tear easier than others, and sometimes it just peels up like that. It's like rubber cement, except it doesn't tear the paper and it can peel off pretty nice. And it gives such a clean look. I'm taking my kneaded eraser and just getting rid of any extra bits of pencil. And that is it. It is a rose-filled heart, which I think is so beautiful. And that was all of them. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys recreate some of these. If you do, please tag me on Instagram. If you liked this video and you like these quick and simple tutorials, please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much again for watching, and until next time, I will see you all later. Bye!